Kita binti Gahari, and today I will present the introduction part, which is the definition of each ISO. The first one is ISO14001. ISO14001 is the international standard that specifies requirements for an effective environmental management system. It provides a framework that an organization can follow rather than establishing environmental performance requirements. The second one is ISO9001. ISO9001 is defined as the international standard that specifies requirements for a quality management system. Organizations use this standard to demonstrate the ability to consistently provide products and services that meet customer and regulatory requirements. The last one will be ISO45001. ISO45001 is the global standard for occupational health and safety, which is to protect workers and guests from illnesses and accidents linked to their job. The purpose of this certification is to reduce any risk that might endanger enterprises and personnel permanently. Understanding the organization and its context. ISO14001, which is to determine the external and internal issues that are relevant to its environmental management system and shall include environmental conditions that are capable of affecting the organization. ISO9001, which is the organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and its strategic direction and that affect its ability to achieve the intended result of its quality management system. ISO45001, an organization must identify both internal and external problems such as conditions, threats, and challenges that are relevant to its goal and that have an impact on the ability to meet the targeted outcome of its OH&S management system. 4.2 will be the understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. For ISO14001 and ISO9001, the organization shall determine interested parties that are relevant to the environmental system and quality management system. By determining the relevant needs and expectations of these interested parties, they have to make sure these needs and expectations become its compliance obligation. For ISO45001 will be the understanding the needs and expectations of workers and other interested parties. The organization are required to consider those are relevant to their OH&S management system. Once interested partners that have been discovered, they have to determine the requirement and set up a method to keep an eye and or review them. Move to the next slide. 4.3 will be determining the scope of this ISO. ISO14001, the organization shall determine the boundaries and applicability of the environmental management system to establish its scope. When determining the scope, the organization shall consider the external and internal issues, the compliance obligations, its organizational unit function and physical boundaries, its activities, product and service, and the last will be its authority and ability to exercise control and influence. While for ISO9001, then determine the scope, the organization shall consider the external and internal issues, the requirement of relevant interested parties, and the product and service of the organization. The last one will be ISO45001. The organization must take into consideration any requests, remarks, and suggestions made by workers that are relevant to their OH&S management system with relation to work activities, products, and services. The last subtopic for class 4 is 4.4. For ISO14001, to achieve the intended outcome, the organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve environmental management, including the processes, needs, and their interaction in accordance with the requirement of the international standard. Second one is ISO9001. To the extent necessary, the organization shall maintain documented information to support the operation of its processes and return documented information to have confidence that her processes are being carried out as planned. ISO45001. The organization must follow the guideline in this paper in order to create, implement, maintain, and continuously improve on OH&S management system, including the necessary procedures and how they interact. 5.1 will be the leadership and commitment. ISO 14001, the top management shall ensure that the responsibilities and authorities for relevant role are assigned and communicate within the environmental management system organization. They have to ensure that the system conforms to the requirement of the international standard, and workers should be report on the performance of the environmental management system, including environmental performance on top management. For ISO 9001, they will integrating QMS requirement into business processes, promoting a process approach and risk-based thinking, providing necessary resource and communicating the importance of quality management and conforming to QMS requirements. ISO 45001, top management must show leadership and follow the OH&S regulations by taking over responsibility for the prevention of work-related injuries and illnesses, as well as providing safe and health environments and activities, plus ensuring that the organization's strategic orientation is aligned with the OH&S policy and associated OH&S objectives. Next, 5.2, the environmental policy of ISO 14001 will be the policy of the environmental system should be appropriate to the purpose and context of the organization, including the nature, scale, and environmental impact of its activities, product, and service. The policy of ISO 9001 will be the top management shall establish, implement, and maintain a quality policy that is appropriate to the purpose and the context of the organization and support its strategic directions, provide a framework of setting quality objectives, include a commitment to specify applicable requirements, and include a commitment to continual improvement of the quality management system. OH&S policy of ISO 45001, the policy must include a commitment to providing safe and healthy working conditions, which involve removing hazards, lowering OH&S risks, and continuously improving the OH&S management system in order to avoid work-related injuries. And 5.3 will be the organization's role, responsibilities, and authorities of the ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and ISO 45001. This ISO has the same organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities, which is the top management shall ensure that the responsibilities and authorities for relevant roles are assigned, communicate, and understood within the organization. They have to make sure the quality management system, the environmental system, and the OH&S management system are conform to the requirements of this international standard and ensuring that the processes are delivering their intended output. The last but not least, 5.4 will be the consultation and participation of the workers. For ISO 14001 and ISO 9001, they have not available for these purposes, but available in ISO 45001. The top management team is establish, implement, and maintain a process or processes for workers, consultant, and participation at all applicable levels and functions in the responsibility of the organization. This will be accomplished by providing time, training, mechanism, clear and relevant information about the OH&S management system and removing any barriers or obstacles to the participation.
Hello, my name is Raden Izati and I will be presenting Clause 6, which is the planning. 6.11 is the general. So first, ISO 14001, the organization shall establish, implement, and also maintain the processes needed to meet the requirement in general environment aspects, compliance obligation, and also planning the action. The organization shall consider two things, which are the external and internal issue, and also the need and expectation of interested parties. ISO 9001 determine the risks and opportunities, give assurance that the quality management system can achieve its intended results, enhance desired effects, prevent or reduce undesired effects, and also achieve improvement. ISO 14001, the organization will consider and take action into both internal and external issues, requirement of interested parties, and also identify the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to give assurance that the OSH management system can achieve its intended outcome and also prevent or reduce undesired effects. 6.2 the ISO 14001 for the environmental aspects determine the environmental aspect of its activities and product and services that it can control and those it can influence and their associated environmental impact. For ISO 9001, the organization shall plan actions to address these risks and opportunities which are integrate and implement the action into its quality management system processes and also evaluate the effectiveness of these actions. ISO 45001 the hazard identification and assessment of risk and opportunities. The organization shall establish, implement, and also maintain a proactive continuous procedure for hazard identification. ISO 14001 the compliance obligations. To determine the compliance obligations related to its environmental aspects, and also determine how this compliance obligation apply to the organization and take this compliance obligation into account when establishing and improving the EMS. So for ISO 45001 is to determine the legal requirements and other requirements. So first, identify and have access to the latest legal requirements and other requirements that are relevant to its hazards, the OSH risks, and the OSH management system. The organization will determine how these requirements related to the organization. 6.1.4 is the planning action. So for ISO 14001, plan significant environmental aspect, compliance obligation, and also risk and opportunities identifies. So for ISO 14001, the organization shall make a strategy to handle opportunities and risk, comply with legal requirements, and be ready to act in emergency. Moving on to 6.2, so for ISO 14001, the organizational shall establish environmental objectives at relevant functions and levels, taking into account the organization's significant environmental aspect and also the associate compliance obligations and considering the risk and opportunities. For ISO 001, when planning how to achieve its quality objectives, the organization shall determine what will be done, what resources will be required, who will be responsible, when it will be completed, and how results will be evaluated. And lastly, ISO 45001. When planning to achieve OSH objectives, to plan the plan will outline the task and will be undertaken, identify necessary resources, and also assign the responsibility and integrate action to achieve all objectives seamlessly into the organization's overall business process. The next clause is clause 7, which is support. 7.1 Resources. So for ISO 14001, all organizations must provide the resources necessary for the creation, implementation, upkeep, and continual improvement of the EMS. ISO 9001, the organization shall determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintain, and continual improvement of the quality management system. ISO 45001, the organization is required to identify and furnish the necessary resources for initiating, executing, sustaining, and also consistently enhancing the OSH management system. 7.2 is the competence. So ISO 14001, the necessary of a person's doing work under its control that affect its environmental performance, who are assigned responsibilities for the environmental management system. ISO 9001, the organization shall determine the necessary competence of a person doing work under its control that may affect the performance of the quality management system. B. Ensure that these persons that are competent on the daily basis of appropriate education, training, and experience. Lastly, ISO 45001. The organization is obligated to identify the necessary expertise of individuals involved in work under its authority that influences the effectiveness of its occupational health and safety management system. 7.3 is awareness, so aware of their role in enhancing the effectiveness of the quality management system and also recognizing the benefits of improved performance. For ISO 45001, aware of the relevant hazards, risks, and also actions. 7.4 is communication. So ISO 14001, the organization needs to ensure that procedures to control internal and external communications and interface are in place. ISO 9001, the organization shall determine an internal and external communication relevant to the quality management system, including on what, when, whom, how, and who communicates. ISO 45001, the organization is required to create and sustain the procedures that are necessary for the internal and external communications related to the OSH management system, including the content, timing, and recipients. 7.5 Documented information. So these are the general. ISO 14001, the organization's EMS includes the documented information required to be maintained and retained by the ISO and also the documented information identified by the organization to demonstrate the effective operations of its EMS. ISO 9001, the organization's quality management system shall include documented information required by the international standard and document information determined by the organization as being necessary for the effectiveness and the quality management system. ISO 45001, the organization's occupational health and safety management system must include the information must be documented and that the documented information considered necessary by the organization. 7.5.2 is the curating and updating. The organization must guarantee the proper identification and description, formatting, as well as reviewing and approving for suitability and adequacy. So the last part of Clause 7 is control and documented information. ISO14001, a suitable process control must be implemented to define the controls needed to approve, review, update, identify changes, and also identify revision status as well as provide the access. ISO 9001 documented information required by the quality management system and by the international standard shall be controlled to ensure it is available and suitable for use when and where it is needed. ISO 45001, this document must undergo control in order to ensure the availability and the appropriateness for use when and where it is required.
Hi, my name is Clinton Brunyang Anandris. I will continue to the class app that is operation. For ISO 14001, the organization shall establish and implement the process needed to meet environmental management system requirement, control, change, and review the consequences of unintended changes and ensure that outsourced processes are controlled or influenced. For ISO 9001, the organization shall plan, implement, and control processes to meet customer and regulatory requirements for product and service by determining needs, setting standards, and allocating resources. For 45001, ISO, the organization must comply with the OHS management system requirement and implement measures to mitigate risks, adapt to changing circumstances, and incorporate new technology and knowledge to ensure continual improvement in occupational health and safety performance. 8.2 Emergency Preparedness and Response. For ISO 14001, the organization required to develop a predetermined response to emergency situations. For ISO 45001, the organization shall establish, implement, and maintain emergency preparedness and response processes and document them to ensure their effectiveness in potential emergency situations. In ISO 9001, it is about requirement for product and services, including customer communication, determining the requirement for product and services, review of the requirement for product and services, and changes to requirement for product and services. Next is Clause 9, Performance Evaluation. In ISO 14001, the organization shall ensure accurate monitoring and measurement by using and maintaining calibrated or verified equipment and establish processes to evaluate compliance with regulatory requirements. In ISO 9001, the organization shall identify what needs to be monitored or measured, determining the methods and timing for doing so, and evaluate the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. In ISO 45001, the organization must identify its activity and operation constantly, recognize hazard risks and opportunities, along with the approaches for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and performance evaluation as applicable to guarantee the validity of results. 9.2 Internal Audit. ISO 40001, the organization shall conduct regular internal audit to assess the conformity of its environmental management system to its own requirement and the requirements of the international standard, and ensure that the audit results are reported to relevant management. ISO 9001, the organization shall conduct internal audit at planned intervals to assess the conformity of its quality management system to its own requirement and the requirement of the international standard. ISO 45001, the organization is required to carry out internal audit programs considering factors such as frequency, methods, responsibility, consultation, plan, requirement, and reporting. this should be done taking into account the significance of the involved processes and the finding from prior audit. The last clause or clause number 10 is improvement. All three standards emphasize the significance of identifying and improving opportunities within the respective management system, with ISO 14001 focusing on proactively addressing environmental impact, ISO 9000 stressing customer satisfaction, and ISO 45001 highlighting the organization's responsibility to achieve intended outcome. When a non-conformity occurs, the organization shall react to it by taking action to control and correct it, dealing with the consequences, evaluating the needs for action to eliminate the causes, implementing corrective action, reviewing its effectiveness, updating risks and opportunity, and making changes to the quality management system as necessary to prevent recurrent or occurrence elsewhere. Last but not least, as a conclusion, ISO 14001 focuses on reducing environmental impact and is applicable to all organizations. It covers key areas such as waste management, energy use, pollution control, and resource conservation. Implementation involves a plan, do, check, act, secure, require documentation, and third-party certification is available and recommended. ISO 9001 concentrates on customer satisfaction and continuous improvement, is applicable to all industry, and covers process management, quality planning, and corrective action. Implementation follow a plan, do, check, secure, require documentation, and third-party certification is available and recommended. ISO 45001 center around protecting employees and stakeholders from workplace hazard, is applicable to all organizations and cover hazard identification, risk assessment, incident reporting, and emergency response. This also has implementation involve a plan, do, check, act, secure, require documentation, and third-party certification is available but not mandatory. Thank you.